Good afternoon. My name is John Stepney, originally from Liberia, West Africa, and I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Drummers send messages. Drummers use to send messages from home. And now I'm going to play for you a little bit.
Tell me a story. Tell me, I want to know about my folks from long ago. Tell me how we came to this land, across the seas and the barren sands. Tell me how we came to be. Tell me about me. I'll tell you a story. I'm Willow Brigham from Cary, North Carolina. The Hunter and the Blind Man. In the village, Oba was a blind man, and everybody knew he was a blind man, but you could not tell it by his conversation. He had so much wisdom, everyone in the village came at some point to sit with him and listen and gain knowledge from his wisdom. His sister Nia fell in love with a local hunter. Micaiah was a very good hunter, but Micaiah had no time for Oba. He's a blind man, he would say. What could he possibly be of use? A blind man? He did not know. Nia married Micaiah, and they moved in with Oba, and they thought things would get better. Every day, the hunter would grab his bow and his traps and go out hunting. And when he came back in the evening, he always had something wonderful, and Nia cooked. And she would say, "My brother's quite wise. You'd be surprised. He's a blind man. What's the use of a man with no eyes?" But Oba would say, "Take me with you. Take me with you hunting." Well, one day, the hunter came back with a very fat, healthy deer. And Nia cooked it ever so gently, and all the spices made it so wonderful that the hunter was very pleased with himself, and he was feeling good about it, so he said, "Tomorrow, Oba, blind man, you can come hunting with me." Well, Oba was delighted. He could not wait. He barely slept a wink. And in the morning, when the hunter got up and grabbed his arrows and his traps, Oba got up too. "We're going hunting today. Yes, come with me." And he grabbed Oba by the hand. They went a-walking through the forest. All day they were walking, and then all of a sudden Oba stopped. "Why are we stopping?" asked the hunter. "Shh," said Oba. "There's a lion over there." "What lion? I don't see any lion." "Yes, it's a lion, but he has eaten and he's full, so he will not bother us. We can go on. And walking for a little while, sure enough, they came upon a lion, a massive lion who was sleeping under a tree because he had been well fed. And the hunter asked, "How did you know it was a lion?" "I see with my ears." See with your ears, you say. All right. And they continued to walk because they were hunters. Now, today was the day Oba was hunting. And they came once again to a point, and Oba said, "Stop." "Why should we stop now?" He said, "There's an elephant, a bull elephant over there, and he's washing in the water, so he will not bother us." "I don't see any elephant." But walking on, sure enough, they came upon an elephant, and he was a bull elephant, and he was washing in the water, and he paid them no mind. Until finally they got to their destination, and that's when the hunter set out his trap, and then he gave one to Oba and said, "This is how it is done," and Oba set out his trap, and they went back home. In the morning, Oba was up very early because he was excited because he knew there was going to be something in the trap. And so once again, the hunter grabbed him by the hand, but Oba led the way because he remembered every twist and every turn until they got to their destination. And immediately the hunter noticed that there were birds caught in each trap. In his trap, there was a little gray bird. But in Oba's trap, there was a magnificent bird of emerald green, gold, and crimson feathers. But a blind man cannot see. So the hunter gave the little gray bird to Oba and took the beautiful one for himself. And as they were walking back home, the hunter asked, "So you're so wise and you're so clever, Oba. Tell me, why is there so much hatred and anger in this world?" And Oba said, "Because there are men like you in this world that take things that don't belong to them." Immediately, the hunter was embarrassed. He took the beautiful bird that belonged to Oba and gave it to him and received the little gray and said, "I'm sorry." They continued to walk. And then he asked another question. "Oba, if you are so wise, why is it there's so much love and kindness in this world?" And Oba replied, "Because there are men like you who learn from their mistakes." And in the village, when anyone said, "Oba, you're so wise. Why are you so wise?" the hunter would put his hand on his brother-in-law's shoulder and say, "Because he sees with his ears and he hears with his heart."
Hello, my name is Evie Evans, and I'm from Pittsboro, North Carolina. I'm going to tell a story of Anansi and how he brought wisdom to the entire world. The Sky King loved all the creatures of the world and decided that he wanted to give each one of them a gift. Each creature would have different gifts, but there was one special gift that he was giving to a small village of people in a huge continent of Africa. And that was the gift of wisdom. Now, Anansi and his family lived very close to that village. And Anansi wanted to know why they were so privileged as to get the gift of wisdom. So he decided that he should have wisdom too. But how was he to get it? He always was very smart, and he always was very cunning. And so he decided that he would beg the people and have them feel sorry for him. He went and got a large gourd, hung it around his neck, and went from house to house, talking to the inhabitants, letting them know just how pathetic he was not to have wisdom. "After all, I am a man with children," he would say. "And how can I teach my children if I have no wisdom?" Well, each of the people who lived in the village decided that he was so sorrowful that they would reach in, take a bit of wisdom, and drop it into his gourd. He did that over and over again until he had stopped at every home in the village. And by the end of the day, his gourd was practically overflowing with wisdom. He walked away very, very smug and happy with himself until he began to think, if I have all of this wisdom, he said, someone will want to take it from me. What shall I do? He decided that he would go to the tallest tree in the deepest part of the forest and hide his wisdom at the very top. So off he went with his wisdom in his gourd. When he reached the tree, he began to climb. And he climbed, and he climbed, and he slid back down. And he climbed, and he climbed, and he slid back down. And he climbed, and he climbed, and he slid back down again. He was so disappointed that he sat, feeling sorry for himself. His son came upon him sitting there, looking very, very sorrowful. And he said, Father, why are you so sad? And Anansi said, Son, I've been trying to climb this tree and I can't. And his son leaned and looked at him and said, Well, Father, if you would just move the gourd to your back, you can climb the tree without a problem. Anansi said, I thought about that, and go home, son. Your mother's making dinner, and tell her I'll be there soon. So when his son walked away, Anansi took the gourd, put it on his back, and climbed the tree without a problem. When he got to the top, he took the gourd and put it on the uppermost branch and sat below it just to take a breath. And a breeze came by and plucked a tiny piece of wisdom and dropped it on Anansi's head. And Anansi had a thought. Anansi said, My son, who is just a child, has more wisdom than I do. Why do I need this huge gourd of wisdom when I am smart and I am cunning? I don't think I want this wisdom at all. So Anansi reached up, got the gourd, and threw it as far as he could. And the wind once again came and took it away, carried all the tiny bits of wisdom all around the world to every land and deposited it in the soil. So every creature who walked or crawled or slithered along got a tiny bit of wisdom. And that is how Anansi brought wisdom to the world.
I'm Curry Williams. I'm from Winston-Salem. They call me the Apple Lady. I'm a folk artist and storyteller, and I'm going to tell you a story today called Hambone. You see, my ancestors, they come from Africa. And when the slave traders came and got them and brought them back to America, they took them to the plantations and they put them where they had to live in little bitty huts. You know, that hut had dirt floors. Some of them had windows and some of them didn't. And then they took some of my ancestors and they took them up to the big house. You see, the big house, that was where all the slaves that they called, you're the house slave. And you did all the cooking. You fixed the pies and the cakes and all the good food. And on Sundays, they had those food all spread out on the table. They sit out on the table in that big white house. And that white house had food all over. Everywhere, you name it, all kinds of food. And they would have a ham. a big ham. And when they cooked that ham, the slaves knew they would slice it really thin because they wanted some ham left on that bone. You see, they were slaves, but they wasn't stupid. They was very smart. They knew just what to do. So when the ham was finished, they took that ham bone and they took it down to their huts where they were living. And they put it in a pot and they cooked it. They put it in their greens, and the greens was good and smelling, and the aromas went to the next hut. And when they finished cooking that ham off in that green pot, they took it to the next house. And the next house put it in their beans, and the beans cooked, and the beans smelled good, and they taste good, and the aroma went on to the next hut, and they took it to the next house. And they shared that ham bone because they knew how to create a community by sharing. And a song came about and a dance came about. And when they danced, when they had that ham bone, they started slapping their legs and clapping their hands. And they would sing that song. Ham bone, where you been? Ham bone, where you been? Around the world and back again. Around the world and back again. Ham bone, where's your wife? Ham bone, where's your wife? In the kitchen cooking rice. In the kitchen cooking rice. Ham bone, where's your daughter? Ham bone, where's your daughter? Down at the lake, swimming in the water. Down at the lake, swimming in the water. Ham bone, where's your son? Ham bone, where's your son? Down at the lake, having fun. Down at the lake, having fun. So as they danced and they did that ham bone and they put that ham bone in that pot and they passed it from community to community and the ham bone went around and around, they said, that's what you do with a ham bone. And that's how you share everything you have. So as slaves, they may be a slave, but they would say those famous words, those 3 words, culture words, when they would get that ham bone, they would look at it and say, we know just what to do with this ham. And that's the story of ham bone. And I want you to share this story. And I want you to carry this story from community to community. That's what telling story is all about.
I'm Michael Connor, and I'm from Cornelius, North Carolina, about 18 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina, in Mecklenburg County. I'm going to give a speech that Frederick Douglass gave in 1853 on the 4th of July. What remains to be answered? Is it that slavery is not divine? God did not establish it. Our doctors of divinity are mistaken that that which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason such a proposition? They that can, may. I cannot. The time for such argument is past. Oh, had I the ear to the nation, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. Not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What? To the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reminds him above all the other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he's constant victim. There's not another nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than the people of the United States at this very hour. How could I love a country that dooms 3 million of my brethren, some of them my own brothers and sisters, who are now clanking the chains of slavery upon the plains of the South, and whose warm blood is now fattening the soil of Maryland and Alabama, and whose crushed spirits lies that dark shadow of oppression, shutting out and extinguishing forever those cheering bright rays of sunlight, of liberty, lighted in the souls of all of God's children by the omnipotent hand of deity itself. How could I love a country thus cursed, thus bedewed with the blood of my brethren? I have not, and I cannot have, any love for this country as such, or for its constitution.
Hello, my name is Pat Stepney, and I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the founder of the North Carolina Association of Black Storytellers. And I would like to share a story about the cowtail switch. It's an African story about a chief named Okaloosa. He had 4 sons, a wife who was pregnant with child. They all had jobs to do. Some fed the cows, and some did the millet, and some fished. But his job was to go out and hunt game, so that all the people in the village would have meat to eat. They knew that he would be gone sometime for weeks at a time, but when he'd come back, he would have more than enough meat for them to eat. So he would get his shield and his spear, and he would go out for the hunt. And one day he left and he kissed his wife goodbye and told the boys, "Make sure you take care of your mother and do your chores, and I'll be home soon." Well, everybody did the chores, and they helped take care of the mother. But time passed, and Okaloosa had not come back. But nobody thought about Okaloosa. The mother had a little baby boy, and she named him Pooley. Well, he was just like all babies. He grew up, and he learned to crawl, and pretty soon he was walking, and then he began to talk. And the first thing he said is, "Where is my father?" And everybody remembered Okaloosa. And the son said, "Well, mother, don't you worry. We'll go find our father and bring him home." Well, they started the journey, and they walked and they walked and they walked until they came to a large clearing. And in this clearing were bones scattered all around, and a rusted shield and a spear, and they knew it belonged to their father. What could they do? Their father was gone, but they had to do something. And one of the sons said, "You know what? I remember that I have a gift. I can speak words, and my father's bones will come back together again." And he began to speak those words, and sure enough, the foot bone connected to the ankle bone, and the ankle bone connected to the leg bone, and the leg bone connected to the knee bone, and the knee bone connected to the thigh bone, and the thigh bone connected to the hip bone, and the hip bone connected to the backbone, and the backbone connected to the shoulder bone, and the shoulder bone's connected to the arm bones, and the arm bone's connected to the neck bone, and the neck bone connected to the head bone. And there his body lay, all the bones. And the brother said, "Yes, you know what? I have a gift too. I can speak words, and skin will cover father's bones." And he spoke his words, and sure enough, the skin covered Okaloosa's bones. And another brother said, "That's right. I have a gift too. I can speak words, and blood will flow through father's veins." And he spoke, and the blood began to flow through Okaloosa's vein. The other brother said, "Oh, that's nothing. I can breathe into father's nostrils, and he will live again." And he breathed into his father's nostrils, and sure enough, Okaloosa's eyes opened, and he saw his sons. Oh, he was so happy to see them. They embraced each other, and they went home. Everybody was glad to see Okaloosa. Well, it's a custom, if someone dies and come back, they would have a party. They got all the food they could get together, and he said to one of the little boys, he said, "Go kill the fattest cow that you can find and bring his cow tail to me." And that's exactly what they did. Oh, he dressed up in his fine robe, and the drums began to drum, and they began to dance, and they began to cheer. They had a wonderful time. They had a party until the moon was high into the sky. And then Okaloosa calmed everybody down and gathered them around him. He said, "Now I'm going to pass the cow tail switch. Now, who will get the cow tail switch? Oh, one brother said, you know it's me. I put your bones together. I spoke those words and your bones just covered up with flesh, said the other. And then the blood began to flow through your veins. And I was the one who breathed the life into your body. He said, yes, that's true. All of that's true. But who was it that remembered me? And everybody looked at little Poolie. And he gave the cow tail switch to his son. He said, now you remember, life and death is in the power of the tongue.
My name is Carolyn Evans. I'm from Fuquay, Verena, North Carolina. Lest we forget that years ago, there was a man in Slabtown, Elmira, New York, one of the friendliest abolitionist communities in all of New York State. And, well, this old man, will participate every Memorial Day. He would put on his fedora and tilt it just so. He would put on that blue uniform, Civil War, medals all over it. Some of the medals were even his. And he would march every Memorial Day, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, down the Grand Boulevard with all the other soldiers. Well, there's a possibility. Now, I'm not saying it happened, but there was a possibility that he was one of the greatest storytellers alive. Well, this storyteller possibly told this story. This story is about a confessor. A confessor is someone who confesses that God is God and Jesus is Jesus and that they're the Lord of his life. Well, I'll tell you. His name was Confessor Chuck. Confessor Chuck was born enslaved. And long, long ago, when it was time to pray, they would all get together in the cabins. And they would take that great big old black washpot and tilt it on its side. And they'd be in that cabin just a praying, but nobody could hear them because the pot swallowed up all their praying. Well, I'll tell you, what happened is that every time Chuck prayed, Master would hear about it. And he'd say, Chuck, when you're in the field, I hear you praying. Chuck, when you're building a road with your wife, I hear you praying. Chuck, I don't like all this praying. Chuck, when you're digging the ditches, I hear you praying. Chuck, you doing too much praying. Chuck, you pray one more time, I'm going to sell you. Well, we all know that Chuck didn't stop praying. So he got sold. Chuck was sold to a heathen. I mean, a sure enough heathen. And Chuck was just praying people right out of sickness, praying people right out of misery. Ooh, when they went down by the riverside, all of them would be praying and they would be putting their hands on Chuck. Pray for me, Chuck. Pray for me, Chuck. Give me patience, Chuck. Let me persevere, Chuck. Give me strength, Chuck, to carry one more load. And he did. Oh, that Chuck was a praying man. Well, the master got sick one day. I mean, he got sick as a dog. He lied on his bed and called the doctor. He said, doctor, come quick. Doctor said, I can't even help you. You're going to die. Get your life in order. Get your business in order. He was even too sick to do that. He called his wife. He said, go to get praying Chuck. Well, the wife went and she got Chuck. And you know what Chuck was doing? He was on his knees praying to the Lord when she got there. He came to his master. Master, you called me, he said. He said, yeah, Chuck. Pray for me. Pray for me. Chuck said, well, Master, that's what I've been doing all the while. I was praying for you. Well, wouldn't you know? And you, that the old master got better. That's right. He got better. He became what you call a traveling evangelist, and he took Chuck with him, even freed him. And they went all around the land. And this teaches me one thing. You can forgive. You can forgive, lest we forget. That same soldier had marched with the GAR, Grand Army of the Republic, across the Potomac River. Those were the soldiers that guarded the capital of Washington. So yes, we can forgive, we can forget, and we could love. That's the end of my story.
Hello, my name is Beverly Fields Burnett from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm president of the North Carolina Association of Black Storytellers. I'd like to share this story with you. We all know that African people were expert rice growers and that many times they were kidnapped and brought to these shores just for their skills. There was a long time ago an old man who was loved by his community. He had a little grandson who lived with him. These folks were expert rice growers. They lived at the top of the hill, and the old man counseled other folks and cared for them and nurtured them and gave them wisdom. One day, the old man looked out and he saw that at the base of this hill, the ocean had gone way out farther than many people had ever seen. And the people of the village were excited. They rushed down to the ocean and they looked at all the things that were in the bare sand, the seashells, and all the other animals that were exposed by the ocean being gone. The old man panicked. He said, "Quick, grandson, run, get a torch, and light all the fires to all the rice paddies. Light every one." The grandson, but grandfather, you're so kind. Why would you do this to your neighbors? The old man said, "Quick, do as I say. Light the fires. Make sure they're all burning." When the people at the base of the hill saw that their fires were burning, their whole lifestyle was burning, they raced up the hill just moments before the tsunami rushed back in and would have washed them all away. The moral of this story is, sometimes when we react to one tragedy, it gets us out of the way of the ultimate other tragedy. And that's the end of that story.
Greetings. My name is Mother Mentor, Alicia T. Mentor from Charlotte, North Carolina, come to tell you stories and brighten your heart. We've been talking about family today. Want to just start with just a little song? It goes like this. Agaga, milo. Agaga, milo. Agaga, milo. Agaga, milo. Agaga. And agaga means that I am and can be all that I want to be. There's nothing that I can't conquer. There's nothing that I can't overcome. We learned this from our father. And every Saturday afternoon, we would dress up and go down on Person Street in Fairville, North Carolina. Well, it was one of those days, and Mama was always getting after Daddy and getting after us about staying clean, because it was so important to her that her children were clean and taken care of and looked like it. Well, Daddy always took us downtown so that we could have what they call a walkabout. He took us down there and we walked about in our finest little clothes. And Mama had made me one of these beautiful smock dresses with the little gatherings in the top. And it was so pretty and clean. Our faces were washed just as nice as they wanted to be. And she was important. Well, one thing when we went about on our walkabout, we would always get a hot dog and we would get some ice cream from the store. Daddy had to go around back to get things from the store at that time. That's just the way things were. It wasn't fair and it wasn't right, but that's just the way things were. Mama said, "Now, you know, Arthur, you need to wait until after we go on our walkabout before you get these children some food, because I don't want their clothes." But the stores were closing up early that day. It was Saturday. They were getting ready for other things. He said, "No, if I don't go get them now, we won't be able to get them." She said, "Well, don't get the hot dog. Just get them some ice cream and they can eat when they get home." He said, "All right. And don't get no chocolate ice cream either." But Daddy knew that my favorite ice cream was chocolate. And so he went around, and when he came back, he had gotten the boys vanilla ice cream. But he got me some chocolate. She said, "Arthur, I told you not to get no chocolate ice cream." But he did, and he gave it to me. And Mama said, "You better be careful not to get a drop on that stairs." And I was real careful. But in being careful, as careful as I could be, a little drop dropped right on the front of my dress. Mama tried to wipe it out. He said, "You're making it worse. Just leave it alone. She's fine." That's what my daddy said. Well, it came time for us to walk out. Lord, I hope nobody don't notice that, my mama said. We got out the car and we started walking up the hill toward the old market house. That old market house stood there as a remembrance of the way things were. It hurt us to see it, and we looked at it. And Daddy would tell us the stories of how our people were sold and bartered there. We didn't like that sight, but that was a part of our history, and Daddy wanted us to know what we never wanted to go back to. We kept walking up that hill, and as we got up that hill, this lady came out. And she said, "Oh, you children sure are dressed nice and clean and pretty. Except you, little girl. Your mama should have washed that dress before she put it on you." My eyes welled up like I was about to cry. I could feel my mama holding her head down, because you didn't look at him straight in the eye back then. My daddy turned around and looked at me, and he said, "Baby, you the prettiest thing in the whole wide world, and your daddy loves you so much. Don't you ever, as long as you live, make anybody think any less of yourself because of what you have on or where you live, because you are important and you are the best thing that God could have given." He kissed me and hugged me, wrapped his arms all around me. And that lady said, and walked on off. Daddy looked at me and said, "I bet she won't say that again." I'll never forget that day of the walkabout. We went on back home, and my daddy loved me, and my mama loved me, and they taught me to love myself. And that's the end.